All right, David, you're live and good to begin.
Thanks for everybody for joining us here in mid-December. A little over a week before Christmas. So once again, I appreciate those that are in our Teams meeting, and also those that are joining us by our CATS partners and our cooperators by YouTube. So thanks once again for joining us. You saw the agenda I sent out this morning, along with the Go Soapbox questions. I believe those are up, and you can go ahead and start putting those in place. But we're going to, I'll give you the sequence that we're going to go through. Obviously, I'm welcoming you all. David Couch with the Department of Education, and our staff will be on here. We do this for those that this is their first time or early times. We do this once a month to learn about what's going on with districts. You can learn out what's going on with the state level and also the federal level. We try to share from all different perspectives. We do appreciate your feedback through Go Soapbox for the districts. That we use that for a lot of important things. So please get on in that. And I think we may need to. I don't think in the invite this time, and I did it last time, put what the password is for that. So if we could put that in the chat here or someplace to where they go on Go Soapbox, and then the password link to get onto that. We're going to hear some feedback from two of our districts. As most of you know, we usually are at a district site when we have our monthly webcast to get some feedback what's going on with that district, but also allow that district to answer our questions and questions from districts about how they're approaching things within that organization. We're getting done to talk about words of wisdom and lessons learned in the world of cybersecurity. We've had a couple of different organizations last week that want to make sure K-12 was aware of some important things related to cybersecurity, and that's FBI and the Federal Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, Kentucky Homeland Security. Wesley Willis is listening in, and he wanted to make sure we were aware of it, and OET within KDE. So we'll be covering that topic. Bob Hackworth and Phil Coleman will be sharing some information we got, but also some things and lessons learned we have from KDE agency on implementing that. We're going to talk a little bit about the feedback. I was just going through it, the latest information we have from all the districts about what we did well last calendar year, what we didn't do well or didn't get to that we should have, and what should our goals be. And that's great information. I appreciate those thus far that have completed that. And you have up till the end of today to do so. So we don't have 100% completing there, but at the rates that they're coming in, I feel confident that we'll have that by the end of today. But for those that did it before the deadline of today, very much appreciate that feedback already. We're going to be circling back. We're going to take you back in time to 11 March 2020. I was telling folks that they did join a little bit early. I have a green notebook that I always carry around with me, and I apparently hadn't opened it up for 5 or 6 months. Much like all of us, our lives got sidetracked. And I looked at two notes that I had in there. And if you take a look, these are from I know it's going in and out there, from the Galt House. And it's actually the introduction of the CIO Summit back on 11 March. And that's the last time I've had this book open because we've been so busy with so many other things. But I did want to take the opportunity to circle back about the things and the summaries that the things we learned that day and the summaries of it. Typically, we would do that a month afterward. But this is the only item I can think of that, besides our regular work and adding on all the things we did with virtual, and because of the pandemic, that we didn't get to. So we're closing that out, but it's pretty fascinating 9 months later to take a look at the top topics we had during this time and how well, to be honest with you, most of them have played out during the past 9 months, and the things that have been addressed. We still have some things to do in that area. We're going to share two reports that we had to present to the legislature. It was by law that came out in the last legislative session. One is about computer science, and a percentage of you are heavily involved with that, not heavily involved with that, but we're all involved with technology in some way. So I thought it'd be of interest, and also with the foster care system, an improvement of the records transfer to try to find out maybe what was causing it to take longer than it should. and what are the areas that could be improved on. And then Dee Dee Connor will take us through some things with Infinite Campus and the school report card, and I'll give a chance for anyone else that has topics they want to make sure we hit on. Like I say, we have some Go Soapbox questions that'll bring some of those on. But once again, thanks for those that have joined us. So I'm going to circle back. We do have two of our districts, much like last month. They shared some, I would say, words of wisdom, how things have played out from their perspective of what's gone well, what could be areas that didn't go so well that we all can learn from, and some goals from the upcoming year. And just like I say, words of wisdom from Rusty Back and Murray Independent, John Seiler of Whitley County. So and then we'll talk about some of the latest heartbeat data that we have. So Chuck, I didn't mention this ahead of time, just to talk about the latest December collection of the data that we have and the latest tool that we put out based upon district's feedback. But first of all, I'll turn it over to Rusty Back and at Murray Independent. So Rusty, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, David. Good to be here.
So go ahead. You got the floor.
Oh, wow. That's kind of dangerous, as Chuck said. Appreciate the invite. It's as we all have experienced over the last several months, it's been a learning experience. Some things you probably knew you initially you can't go back and do. Wish I could have put my Chromebook order in on March 11th at Kisti of last year, for sure. We just recently got those in, though, and after Christmas, first of the year, we'll be distributing 1,071. We have about 1,650 students, but we bought new ones for our entire 7th through 12th, also 4th grade and 2nd grade, and using existing ones that we already have, and we'll be a one-to-one. So when this pandemic hit there in the spring, we didn't give out every single Chromebook that we had. We probably had 1,100 or so at that time. Many students had a device at home. Parents allowed them to use them. But when the federal government started having the discussion, there was going to be this influx of money into the schools. I can remember watching that, catching that on the news. The next day, went immediately to the superintendent and said, "Hey, this money hits. This could be the opportunity that instead of having to use general funds to get to one-to-one, because we knew where we wanted to go, we could use that funding source." So that was very good. Coming back in the fall, once we were in person initially, and then we had to go to online instruction for everybody, we had more requests for devices. I think a lot of parents who had a device and let their child use it were not about to go down that road again. So they reached out, and we've pretty much close to giving about all the ones that we had, minus a few, here and there. So getting those new ones out, and now definitely having plenty to go around will be definitely be helpful. It's been many districts that have been one-to-one for years will tell you that broken parts and that sort of thing, is part of the journey. And sure enough, that was our case, which was enlightening, I think, to the schools. Even though I had told them, I think they realized, oh, wow, they are going to break this. The dog is going to accidentally knock it off the bed, and orange juice somehow got spilled on it, that sort of thing. So, one of the things that and I can remember, I think, David, you sent it out back in the spring, talked about teachers are really going to have to be able to help troubleshoot when there's some sort of connection issue or whatever with their students. And my wife teaches 2nd grade, and of course, I forward your information along, and she told me this, I think it was last Thursday or Friday. She said she's shocked or just so proud of herself how much she's been able to help students. She had a case of a parent was like, every time Johnny gets on, he has trouble connecting. And she had said that to me several months ago, and I said, well, have the parent check, see what else is going on in the house. And so sure enough, last week she said, well, check what's the other kids doing? Are they on watching Netflix? Oh, no, not a bit. Well, won't you go in there next time there's an issue and see? Sure enough, next time there's an issue, went in there and the other kids were watching Netflix. So she was so proud of herself being able to offer tech support. And it's funny, she's relaying the story. I'm like, honey, what do you think I've dealt with for 20 years, with adults? So, it's hearing those stories and how much the teachers have grown as far as technology use has been good.
Thank you, Rusty. I appreciate that insight from both you and both your wife, and obviously I have four my immediate family that's involved with this as well. So it's been a learning experience. But based on the feedback, I am pretty proud of all of our districts and I saw that from your all's feedback so far. I think there's an underappreciation by folks is just how fast we flipped and went from 100% in person. There was occasional folks that were learning virtually to now 100% virtual. Pretty amazing. Like I say, as we all knew what we knew on March 11th, of putting that Chromebook order in. That's a good line. That's a good line. Well, thank you, Rusty. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
Morning, John. Would you give us an update from Whitley County?
Absolutely. Happy to be here. And first of all, I want to say thank you to you and your department up there, David, for all the support that you give all the different school districts across the state. And I think it's never been more evident than the need for your department and that support since last March. I heard someone say how quick the page has turned, and who would have thought, February of last year that we would be sitting here in December with the amount of red COVID incident reports and the how heavily we're relying upon virtual learning right now across our state. And here in the Whitley County School District, we're no different. Unfortunately, about the time the metric came out, we hit red, and we have been in red ever since then. But I kind of want to talk about some of the things that we had done prior to COVID with the support of your staff and our technology department here at Whitley County, and then what we've done since then. And first of all, our vision statement for the district is we always put kids and our community first. And about 4 years ago, our tech department and our two biggest schools in the district, which Whitley County High School and Whitley County Middle School, started a one-to-one initiative with Chromebooks. And one of the things that I think helped our district be successful, and I know there were other districts in the state that were one-to-one before we were, but what helped us in our area, and we were one of the first ones in our area to do it, was that the principals at both of those schools were 100% bought in to going one-to-one and providing this Chromebook to our students. And the next thing that they did was get their site base on board with it. So we did that, and one of the things that helped us get to the one-to-one, and you got to remember, this is long before any CARES money and things like that. Our principals and our site base allocated part of their site base budgets over a few years to help pay for this. So they had some skin in the game. That the teachers on site base shared that, communicated that with, and so did the principal with the staffs at those schools, and we got buy-in from doing that. And we went one-to-one, I believe it was 4 years ago, at our two biggest schools, and we have had a technology plan through Kevin Anderson and his tech group here, or our tech department, to slowly go one-to-one throughout our district. And how fast the page turned with the COVID and the CARES money, and it allowed us to do this. But I look back, and one of the biggest things was we went slow at the beginning, getting the buy-in from those site-based decision-making councils at the schools and the principals. And then it started kind of the chirping, the talking by the other teachers at the elementaries and other places about the Chromebooks and the great things that our students were able to do with those. And that helped our 7 elementary schools start reallocating some of their budgets slowly into this. And before COVID hit, and I'm talking about a 3-year span from when we first went one-to-one at our middle school and high school till COVID hit, some of our elementaries had slowly started shifting their site-based allocation instructional money to so much each year to buying Chromebooks. So we had at a couple of our elementaries, I think it was 2 out of the 7, were almost 1-to-1 before COVID hit. But whenever COVID hit, we saw this opportunity and we ordered our Chromebooks, and with the work that had already been done prior to COVID, when we opened school up virtually August 26th, I believe it was, of this year, we were a 1-to-1 district, and I'm very proud of that. I know our tech department, Kevin Anderson and his group are, and it really allowed us to move at the speed of what this pandemic was moving. Last spring, I think, I speak for a lot of school districts, if they weren't 1-to-1, and even if they were, they probably were not heavily vested to continue instruction at the level that they had prior to COVID. And I know we did that. The NTI packets, we had to rely on way too heavily for that. We just were not prepared. And come end of August, compared to where we were in March, it was unbelievable how much our district had grown virtually. And a couple of things that helped us be successful there I've spoke about as far as the purchase of Chromebooks. But the other thing was the PDs that we started on in the spring planning for we knew our PD sessions to start the year would not look anything like they had in the past. We knew it was probably all going to be virtual and recordings, and our tech department and our curriculum team here at the board worked really closely together, and we identified those teachers that were on our curriculum teams through departments and grade levels throughout the school district, and we brought those folks in and we talked to them, and we laid out curriculum maps and everything else, and we started looking at what our teachers needed as far as PD in the summer before school ever started, and to get everybody on an even playing field as far as them understanding Google Classrooms and Edgenuity. We purchased that, and the other tools that we had to help us go virtual, because we really thought at that time we were hoping we'd get to come back, but we knew there would be times that we would be shutting down school because of spikes in COVID cases, and so we wanted to be prepared to go virtual. Never did we dream that we'd be sitting here getting ready to finish the first semester and not have a single day that we've had hybrid or kids in our building in Whitley County. But we really went at that task and put a lot of manpower, a lot of financial resources into our PDs and getting everything virtual. We recorded it so that our teachers could go back and watch it as they needed to refresh up on those. And I tell you, one of the things that really, as we started bringing our curriculum team leaders from each school and departments in, they started saying, you know, the kids that are 7th grade, 8th grade and above, they had Chromebooks for the last 4 years, you know, or since they became middle schoolers. So they're pretty good on the Chromebook. But in the PD sessions, the talk was, what about the parents and the grandparents of those 3rd graders and 2nd graders and 5th graders? And wow, so that opened up a whole, you know, a new obstacle, a new hill to climb became apparent. So what we did early on, before our first days of school, we had open house. And what we did with the open house is we had the teachers schedule their parents in about 3 or 4 at a time, and we had their Chromebooks already ready with that child's name on it and things loaded up on it. And we invited the parent to bring the child in, and we had PDs for parents and students right there in the classroom. So imagine that 3rd grade teacher comes in and she's got 3 or 4 of her kids with their parent or grandparents sitting right beside them. They get on the Chromebook. She shows them Google Classroom, how to log on to Zooms, and where the recordings from these Zooms would be so they could watch them later on. Or if a kid couldn't get onto internet connectivity that day, or maybe something was going on, that they would be recorded. So we not only did virtual PDs for our teachers, but we set this up for parents. And man, when we started doing that, the work prior to that was a very heavy lift. But when we started doing that, you could hear the people in the community just talking about these Chromebooks and the positivity behind it. And so that has been so much of a saving grace for us. You know, our tech department working with our curriculum teams and those teachers out in the building, schools that are part of the curriculum teams, and really everybody just kind of coming together with these ideas. And so we felt really good about that. One of the other things we have had to tackle where we live, it's a rural area, southeastern Kentucky. We have about 4,200 students, and they are spread out everywhere from right here in town all the way to where there is no internet. So some of the things, other obstacles we saw where kids wanted the Chromebooks and the parents wanted the Chromebooks, even if they couldn't connect to the internet. So what we have done is we have been loading on jump drives lessons and even recordings. We have teachers that are coming in and recording lessons, and then we're downloading them onto this jump drive with the assignments. And each week, those parents will come and drop off a jump drive and pick up their child's next week of assignments. So we've been doing things like that. I'm trying to look back here at some of the notes that we've done, and it's just, here lately, one of the great things we've been doing is early on we started with our last mile money, we started equipping some vehicles with the Verizon hotspots and different things. I think the other one's Appalachian Wireless, and trying to put those out in the community. And also at that same time, we did a boost to our Wi-Fi. Kevin and his tech department went to the schools, and we boosted the Wi-Fi capability to where, and we advertised it through our Facebook and through our all calls to our parents and students that at all of our schools, they could just pull up and jump onto the Wi-Fi with their Chromebooks. So you have a child that lives in the area, the district of Whitley East Elementary, which is far east of Winsburg, almost in the Bell Counties where that elementary school is. Those kids don't have to drive the 14 miles down that road to campus. It's about 15 miles. If they live 3 or 4 miles close, towards the elementary school there, they can just drive there and jump on the Wi-Fi, download assignments, watch videos, and never have to get out of the car, just sit there in the parking lot. And we've seen that be successful. And what we've really started doing here lately, last probably 4 weeks, is we have partnered up with Verizon. They've given us a pretty good deal on the hotspots, and so has Appalachian Wireless. And we are trying to put those into students' homes. And we have had great success with that. And again, what we did was we sent out surveys, and we found out the students that did not have reliable internet. And then what we did, we really fleshed that data down or out and got the households, not by student, we went by household, by address. And what we found was that of the 500 and something kids that didn't have reliable internet, we had it down to about 310 households. So we have targeted those with hotspots. So that's some of the things that we've been doing here, and this thing continues to evolve, and we're finding new, better ways, more efficient ways to get to our kids, reach our kids virtually. The teachers have really become proficient in this, and we couldn't do it again without our tech department and their support that they receive from you folks. I know at our middle school, long before COVID, some of your group was there training our tech department, some of our curriculum team members in Google Classroom a year and a half ago. And man, how valuable has that been? And yeah, we got a lot of good things going on. But I will say I cannot wait to get kids this vaccine to come to this community, and we get kids back in the building. We have definitely done the best that we can with it.
Yeah, you've done. I appreciate that whole long view that you've had. You may need to mute me on your side, John. Yeah, that view from, and it was good for our staff to hear that. It doesn't work directly with districts, but just all the different moving components that we all had to put in place, and going from parents to grandparents, bringing them to the side, and even as you say, is you had a pretty good run and go on the one-to-one, but the amount of work it was to take to switch to 100% virtual, and you did some pretty good pre-planning with digital learning team, getting the teachers on board with that. I saw from some been looking at the feedback from all the districts to where, and this will happen. The thing, as I've told you before, my proudest time in all my working career including when I was an Army officer, the past 9 months, because it took 28 years to do the 9 months fairly well, but also the way people reacted and have responded over the past 9 months. And what we did in the technology field, we provided a viable option, not a 100% perfect, because there's that crowd that says, but it wasn't 100% perfect. And that the 100% perfect crowd always is bothersome to me. Nothing with this was going to be 100% perfect, but and you have teachers, which I think for the most part with my family has done an outstanding job adapting to this and maximizing it. But you'll hear from X%, a smaller percent that fuss and complain and diminishes overall. But my hat's off to Whitley County and Murray Independent, all the districts. But I appreciate you sharing those words of wisdom and insight to us this morning. Chuck, I would like for you to next to update us. As most of you know, we do our digital readiness survey. It takes a snapshot up to July, but because of this tremendous emphasis on virtual during this past year, we've had 2 data elements that we've been tracking, and we track it monthly. And so we just released our newest version of our digital readiness, but we're updating 2 data elements in that one. I believe it's 2. We're updating both the home and access, or we're just doing maybe it's just the internet access beyond the school campus is the one
just beyond school campus, Dave.
So okay. So that's a data element that we took a snapshot in time, but we're also tracking what number of computers and devices have come in since. Because I got to tell you, from my seat, it's a question I get 2 or 3 times. I want to say a day. It feels like a day, but it may be a week from some folks that they're trying to make really important decisions and understanding about what we have and don't have, and so that information is really important to us. So Chuck, give us an update on what we have in December.
Absolutely, David. So first of all, hats off to John, Rusty, and all the EdTech leaders we've got online today, because you guys have literally implemented superhuman efforts, okay, to close this gap of access. And I'm going to continue to emphasize, David, and I know you do too, and we strongly feel this way, that it should never solely be the responsibility of K-12, all right, to be that tip of the spear. And David, I'm coining a phrase that you sent out earlier in the year of solving internet access away from the school campus. But I am continually just blown away and amazed at the level of effort that our school districts have undergone themselves to make sure that every student has that fighting chance. So as you mentioned, and Marty, if you can, try and bring up, a visual that I can speak from. I've got a copy of it myself, but I know you've got it queued up for everyone. And what you'll notice to me is just astounding. And David, you're right. This is something we continue to track on a monthly basis, but we're literally down to, just a little over 2% of our students that don't have some degree of access away from the school campus. All right. And that's just phenomenal. I mean, it really, really is. And when you look at devices, just 1.6% of students at this point in time that aren't packing around a device. And there's some great conversation going on just right now over in Go Soapbox about not only the successes that districts have had fielding devices, but as we've all spoken to, David, since the beginning of KETS, some of the challenges we're going to have moving forward at sustaining that. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Marty, did you just put up a different sheet?
Yeah, it is a different sheet.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. So that was the previous month, and so we're trying to
okay. Yeah, you're showing the increase.
But obviously, as we fielded all of these devices to students, there's always going to be the ongoing conversations and challenges about sustainment, replacement, and David, that's just a really good dialogue right now that's occurring on Go Soapbox. But this is something we're going to continue to track. I mean, obviously, as you guys can see from the infographic, there's been an additional 112,000 devices, all right, that have been added to Kentucky K-12. We've still got almost 59,000 that we're still waiting on delivery for. So we're doing everything in our power. And when I say we, I'm talking about between Katie, the agency, and our school district customers to close that gap. So I just want to tip my hat to everybody, John, Rusty, everybody on the call today that's just doing superhuman efforts to solve that problem.
Thanks, Chuck. And while this is a very small percentage, it's never going to get down to zero, to be honest with you. And that's why I say those that or after 100% perfect. We're never going to be 100% perfect. And you have to educate them. It's nothing in life is 100% perfect. There are very, very few things that I'm aware of. And, for example, and, we've heard this from feedback that this is a tiny percentage, but it's percentage. There's X percentage of parents that do not want that to have, do not want to receive a device or internet access. And that's a real thing. I'm here. It's a cultural thing with X number of them. So it's either in person or on paper. And so, you're not to be able to overcome that. You can offer it, which we know the districts that are offering it, but there's X percent of parents that are not and knowingly not wanting to take advantage of that opportunity. While wireless, I always tell folks don't wait around for last mile wire, because you might probably be waiting 2 or 3 decades for that to hit every home. Wireless is going to happen much faster and is available in a very, very much high percentage of Kentucky. And but we have spots that there's no last mile wired, and there's no last mile wireless beyond a satellite. I mean, there are nooks and crannies that have that. And eventually we hope that's hit, but it's not right now at the time that we need it. So we still, are trying to come up with strategies. We talked about last month. I'm not going to go in depth what we're doing with Kentucky Educational Television. It's another tool in the toolbox. Once again, it's not 100% perfect. But could it chip away from, I think we have, I think it's 13,000 of our 648,000 students without. That's just over 2%. Could that chip away and offer 3,000 of those students or 5,000 of those students? A way to do that. So that's why we're asking for, looking at pilot that this next semester and going full scale with it the next semester after that, just to chip away at it, provide that option. And, John was talking about that approach to where the parents have zero. But if the parent could get a KET, Kentucky Educational Television digital signal, it's doing some of the same things. It's bringing it down to a device that they could bring down to the Chromebook without having to travel any distance. And so we are looking at all the options in the toolbox. And the nice part about, the pandemic, if there's a nice part, it's allowed us to put emphasis on certain areas that we wanted to have emphasis on and had emphasis on for quite some time. They've been master plan. They're in our current master plan areas of improvement and areas of acceleration. And boy, have we accelerated a good number of those throughout this pandemic. I did want to give another plug for Go Soapbox, the link, and Marty, you may want to put down in also in the chat the password to get into that if it's not already obvious to them. Because we do want your feedback, and we're going to be bringing up some of those Go Soapbox responses. So once again, I hope you're going to that, and my apologies for not putting that out in the invite. Our next topic we're going to hit upon is, as I talked about, is around cybersecurity. We get 4 billion attempted cyber attacks on Kentucky K-12 during the average school year, but this has not been average. And cyber criminals, and just those that are in general that want to cause cyber chaos, are going full court press, to use a basketball analogy, during this time to cause as much chaos during this time as they can, but also looking at it as a money-making method. And while there's a big target on K-12 because generally in K-12, the people are helpful, trying to be helpful. That's just their nature going into K-12, as most of the folks have here. You're trying to, help kids get a good run and go in life, and that's definitely going to usually attract a more helpful type of person. And so, they're taking advantage of some of that good nature that these cyber criminals are. So, we've had incidences across the United States to where, and this is what got on the radar screen, is the ransomware. And it's caused some pretty high level. The CISA organization I mentioned before, the FBI, the Kentucky Homeland Security wants to make sure that all folks are aware of it. Bob Hackworth, who is our cybersecurity and cyber safety officer for Kentucky K-12, had already commented on that to me. I wanted to give Bob and also Phil Coleman to share some of the things we've done in KD agency to take it, I don't like to use the words take advantage, but take advantage of this crisis, meaning we've been able to radar screen of folks like we've never been able to before, because of the crisis and take security much more serious. So, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you and Phil to talk about this next topic.
Thanks a lot, David. And back to something you said a little earlier, in that nothing's 100% perfect. I do want to say that my daughter, I believe she's 100% perfect, but she's not a teenager yet. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Anyone with advice, I'll take advice anytime you've got it. But, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to speak with folks. Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to Wes Willis of Kentucky Homeland Security. I'm glad that you're able to be here today. And I really appreciate, again, everyone has thanked all of our partners out in the districts. I really appreciate everything that you all have done around cybersecurity throughout this whole thing, because not only have we been implementing a lot of changes and a lot of new devices, but we've also been thinking about security. And I know you have, because I've been getting lots of questions as we've been doing this, and people have been emailing me and calling me. And I really appreciate everyone's thinking about cybersecurity and trying to get things right as we move through this, and not just throwing stuff out there. That means a lot. It means a lot to me, and it definitely means a lot to the folks whose data and information you're protecting. So really thanks again. I think Kentucky K-12 was probably as prepared as anyone to get through this pandemic and to switch from on-site to, working from home and learning from home. But a lot of that preparation wasn't because we were worried about a pandemic. We were just preparing and using the technology that we had, and it just happened to work wonderfully in a pandemic. And so you can't always think, I want to make sure that I'm 100% prepared for anything that comes down the pike, but I just want to make the best use of this technology. And by doing so and being secure, you'll find that you have done a lot of the preparation that's required to weather this sort of storm. And so to get on to the article that was forwarded to me, again, by several people who really want to make sure that we have the best information and everything. And I'm going to kind of send that out to the chat right now, the article that I'm talking about. The FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, MSISAC, CISA, and FBI, have they got together and published an article talking about how much cyber criminals are focused on K-12 right now. And obviously they're focused on K-12 because K-12 has a lot of data. We have a lot of very valuable data, as we all know, in the form of our student information. And then the confusion that results from moving from one environment to a whole nother type of environment, inevitably creates an opportunity that the cyber criminals can take advantage of. And as this whole thing moves forward and we start to move back, there's going to be another opportunity for confusion and, folks not sure exactly what they should be doing to stay secure and all that. And so I really look at this to just kind of go even more so. And as we were all trying to help defend and justify adding additional layers of security, I think that the information that we've been provided here recently in this article helps us make that justification for additional money or additional effort, that sort of thing. And I know everyone is already busy, but this is just an opportunity that we definitely want to take advantage of. The article, and I'm just going to summarize it here pretty quickly. Ransomware, malware, and DDoS attacks are like the biggest issues that K-12 is facing across the nation. The ransomware incidents especially are very concerning because back in January through July, so we're into the pandemic, they made up about 28%, just over a quarter of the total ransomware instances that were being reported to these agencies. And then later on in August and September, that jumped from a quarter to over half of the ransomware incidences. So in the space of just a couple of months, K-12's piece of that pie just went huge. And so I think that's something that we all need to be cognizant of. We are definitely targets right now. If you weren't sure before, please be sure now that we are definitely targets. The cybersecurity or the cyber criminals, and again, you all know this. I'm probably talking to the choir. They know who we are. They've done their research. They know who's in what job, and they completely understand how to try to attack us using email, using our internet connections, that sort of thing. And so it's just something that we all have to be very concerned about right now and make sure that we are as prepared as possible by implementing strong passwords, by implementing safe links and safe attachments, putting up those caution banners in your emails, everything we can do to try to help our staff kind of be aware of this and not get fooled or tricked by phishers. I think it behooves us to go ahead and make that happen. To that point, and I'm going to kind of throw this over to Phil here in a minute. I'm really excited that throughout this pandemic, KDE implemented a lot of security initiatives, including the stronger passwords. And I think that has made KDE a lot stronger. And for those districts who've implemented that stuff, I really applaud you. I know there's no good time to do this sort of thing, especially during a pandemic, but it's still something that we want to try to move forward with. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Phil, unless there are questions. And obviously, you know how to get back in touch with questions.
Thanks, Bob. This summer has been a summer that we had a few of these initiatives that we wanted to do, but we had never planned on doing all of these during the summer. And some of those, Bob's already mentioned, password upgrades for all of KDE, 100%. We just implemented password reset notice, is something we'll talk about in a little bit more depth in just a minute. And we're about 75% done with that. Disk encryption. We realized that all of these Windows workstations were now in people's homes, and they weren't in the safety of the 300 building and behind our firewalls and those kinds of things. So we implemented disk encryption for 100% of our Windows environment, safe links and safe attachments, and then the email banners that you probably see on a lot of emails that are coming to you that are not inside your organization. So all of those were really, really big security things that we were able to push forward this summer. And I'm not going to say it's because of COVID, because I don't want to give COVID credit for hardly anything except confusion and bad stuff. So, but because we were in the situation we were in, we were able to initiate these and complete these in a timely manner and in a good manner. So something about that list, I just want you to think about. Password upgrades, reset notice, safe links and safe attachments, email banners, and then the last one would be disk encryption. So I would say 4 out of 5 of those has nothing to do with the device that you're using. So it's agnostic as far as that goes. And it really has nothing to do with where that device is. It can be on your network. It can be in the parking lot. It can be in a McDonald's or at a student's or teacher's home. So you see a lot of those initiatives are really revolving around protecting the person and protecting the person's identity and not letting, bad things happen because people give their passwords out. And so we have things to try to educate people, but every time they get an email from outside, they get a banner, I guess they get tired of looking at that. But eventually, they may think twice about clicking on a link if it really didn't come from somebody that they know. So the disk encryption obviously was a Windows initiative, but I think 4 out of 5 of those are more, revolved around the human aspect of this. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of emphasis put going forward, is around the identity of the person and the professional development it takes to protect that, and not so much around what device you're using. So I think we have a Go Soapbox question on the reset notification. As you well know,
I think that's question number
anybody-
2 for those that want to. Somebody
Yeah,
can bring that up.
number 2.
Question 2.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. So as you probably know, Windows does a terrible job at notifying people that their passwords have expired. And if they're using an iPad or a Chromebook, they don't get any notification at all. So for passwords that are expiring, we felt like it was necessary for us to provide a little bit more notification to people, especially if they are remote and working from their homes and things like that. So we were able to do that this summer, and we have that that we can package up and help school districts do the same thing. So, we have a couple ways we could do that. We could, kind of implement something, from a statewide perspective, and it would all kind of look the same. Or we can give districts the ability to customize the language that's in that also. So that's one security initiative that we can hopefully pass on to school districts if they need that. And really, this one came about after we implemented the password upgrade policy, which was 15 characters or more, and but it did expire, and it had a 180-day life, so it's a 6 months lifespan. So we felt like in 6 months people would forget when their passwords were ready to expire, and we didn't want them to be caught at home and working at night and not be able to get a hold of someone on our service desk to help them reset their password. So that was important, a part of our whole security package.
And Phil, I think it's important to note that that's one of the efforts that we really feel like gives people a better day. It increases security,
Sure.
but it actually also helps people take more responsibility for themselves and no matter what device you're using, whether it's a phone, a tablet, a Chromebook, a Macintosh, or a Windows device, getting a timely notification that your password is about to expire is pretty key. And we actually learned about it from some districts who had actually already been doing it. And they were kind enough to share the script that they were using with us, which we kind of customized to make a very potentially generic script, and one right now just for KDE. But we would be able to turn a very generic, uncustomizable script on for all of Kentucky. But if districts wanted to customize one for themselves, we could hand them the script and say, go to it, and let that work. And I think that getting that information from a trusted source that your password is about to expire is very important. It's also very important to make sure that your letter doesn't look like a fish, because that's just the sort of thing that a phisher would do, that a cyber criminal would do. Say, hey, your password's about to expire, click this link to change it, for example. So a lot of thought has to be put into that, which is one of the reasons our email version of that is so generic looking, to try to get around that issue.
I would like to jump in here with, much like you all within your district, I'm the CIO of KD Agency. And so, a lot of things we try to do is it's eating your own dog food or drinking your own champagne. We've been able to use this as a way to both implement better security, make it a better experience, but also educate them. So just like, we're in the process of, you have to update your passwords for your staff. You do it, every X amount of months. And so we've used this as an opportunity to educate them on why it's important. For example, my communication they went to Commissioner, and obviously I met with him, talked about the importance of it, and all the associates. And we have a group called the Technology Planning Committee that meets within the agency talking about the importance. But 92% of all cyber crimes, their entry point is through or around an email system because they're pretending to be someone. They get in there, they actually get in there, and they do some destructive things. So they get into someone's account because the password wasn't sophisticated enough, or they were duped into giving up their password through a phish that looked very realistic. And so obviously, a lot of these cyber criminals pretend to be the IT help desk. And so we use this as an opportunity for the agency to say, listen, yeah, passwords are coming up, having to be changed for certain parts of our organization, not all at the same time. But beware of, here's what a phish looks like. And here's, for example, we will never ask you for your for your actual username and password. Anyone that does, then it's a 99.99% probability it's a scam. Don't fall through it. And by the way, it only takes one of you to be duped to put the rest of you in jeopardy, which gets their attention. But also you use the examples of those that were duped into giving up their email credentials, who parlayed that into going and changing that person's place of deposit for their pay. That gets people's attention when they think they're paid. They may not get paid because someone gets in their account. But by the way, when someone goes into an actual email account because that person was duped in giving up their credentials, well, they can then pretend to be that person because when you hit the reply button, it really is from them. And they can get certain information that they should not get because someone thinks they're talking to that person because they're not seeing them side by side. So we have used this as a way, and we're not saying, thou shalt, use all the things we've done in the agency, or all the things that the federal folks that are recommending. But I can tell you a very high percentage of all that is very good. And we're willing to give you the things that we've done and the techniques that we've used that have been successful. And we all know that very few people care about security until it goes bad. And then they say, why didn't you force me to do all the things that they were fighting so hard against? So there's a technique to this of trying to be secure, but also not having a mutiny. I would tell you, when you're leading technology, you can go to the extreme of security where you have mutiny with your staff. Yes, you've been secure, but you have mutiny with the organization. So there's a lot of technique that goes into being a technology leader of organization when you're trying to put these things in place. Yes, Phil, you have an additional comment?
Yeah, I was just wanting to kind of wrap this up. With the password reset, you got to think you got to give your teachers or your students or whoever needs to change those passwords, and you really give them a way to do that. So we feel like the password reset should come after the password upgrade is done, and also the implementation of self-service password reset. So you kind of married those three things together to get this to work.
I think we had a to-do that we pushed back that we were talking about yesterday about the passwords. And so, this summer, I think they were supposed to be, all the districts were to switch over. Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So you all have, whatever we can do to help you leverage that within your district, because the risk you take now, when you have organizations like, the FBI and CISA and Homeland Security saying, hey, listen, there are full-fledged cyber attacks specifically targeting K-12, even though we've said it. They're specifically targeting K-12. If there's any time to try to get something on the radar screen of importance, this is the time. So if you need anything from us to help you try to make that case, and why there's no 100% convenient time to do that, but you are at tremendous risk if you haven't done certain security things that have been recommended for a while, especially if it goes bad. And folks are saying, well, why didn't you do them? Because that's when they start really questioning it. So I really do encourage you to talk with your superintendent directly, ideally face-to-face or voice-to-voice, virtually, whatever which way you do that directly. And when I say really face-to-face, it's more face-to-face virtually, perhaps more than anything. But maybe you come to the office, you can see them have that to make sure if you're not a district that's implemented, for example, changing the passwords, the risk that you have during this time. Because cyber criminals, they are licking their chops because they're being successful, and they're going full court press because they are successful. And so anything that you can do to make it more difficult, while nothing's 100% perfect, is you need to take a look at. So, Bob, I'm going to ask you to share the document that's been shared with us through our field staff to share that out with our districts. But anything that you need to have a conversation with your superintendent of passwords in particular, but the other types of things, you don't have to use the exact things that we're using, but they just make it just a little bit different. Just like, just this little warning label that comes up, for the email for our staff, it helps them understand, well, someone may be pretending to be one of our staff members, but it's really not, because they got this little label that says this came from outside our organization. So as you know, people can pretend to be an email address. They're not really in it. So it does help us little bit by little bit chunk away at these cyber criminals that are being very successful. But Bob and Phil, I appreciate you, discussing this topic, and we'll share a little bit more with you going forward. And I appreciate. I've looked at the comments. Looks like we have a lot of districts that have responded about the things they've done to try to address those items that we're recommending in that discussion question that you had, Phil. So let's circle back to 11 March 2020. As I said, this is a lot of things have happened in between that time. But I do want our staff that was involved in what we do is we'll send you this summary, but at a very quick level, the key points of the 4 areas that we have identified to be discussed, and then were discussed that day way back in March, and our takeaways from it. So I'm going to go back to that time frame. The first item we had was we called tying them all together, the interoperability between all the different systems that we have. And I would probably have to say of the 4 items the 4 items we're discussing, this item probably has not been addressed as much as the other 3, but it will still remain a priority. So I think, Dee Dee, I know you led this topic, but Chuck, you wrote up the summary of it. So what words of wisdom you have on this particular topic that we can share?
Well, word of wisdom number 1, it's a huge topic. It's a complex topic. And I would say that every one of our EdTech leaders out there can absolutely associate with that. As we've just finished discussing, and it's so timely, David, this pandemic has unveiled more than ever the necessity to ensure that all of our users, students, staff, and teachers have secure access to resources they have both in the cloud and at school, from wherever they're at with whatever device they've got. Now, that kind of lays a roadmap of where we need to go as an enterprise. And when you start to break that conversation down, and we've got this from our feedback a year ago, our end of year feedback, as well as what we heard while at the summit, is there's 2 points of frustration associated with this topic: tying them together, interoperability, integration, identity. I'm going to throw that one out there. From an end user's perspective, there's always the frustration of, I have multiple accounts to access stuff, multiple password policies I have to remember, and that's frustrating. And it's insecure, and I think folks would understand why. Additionally, and we all understand why this is, because there's a bunch of technology goo behind the scenes that we're not going to talk about today, but we're going to spend a lot of time talking about in 2021. Users don't often get timely access when either adults are hired or students are enrolled because of some of the workflow processes behind the scenes between HR and the technology staff, or just the technology components themselves. So there's frustration from an end user's perspective. And as we've seen from you, there's a lot of frustration and headaches from our IT administrators, our technology administrators. The fact that we have to create multiple accounts in multiple places that we have to keep up with, that's a big deal, okay? That is the root cause of why we have, David, as you've mentioned, stale accounts over the years, okay? Poor password policies. So there's all these aspects that are very troublesome when it comes to just user management. So, long story short, our goal moving forward, and this is something I'm going to say over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to go heads down on as an enterprise, is how do we establish that single, secure, cloud-based identity for everyone that allows them to have access to whatever they need from wherever they're at with whatever device they've got, all right? How do we implement the technologies, the out-of-the-box technologies, not custom things that we build? Because here's what I will tell you. We have several districts that have solved this problem statewide, but they've had to run the gamut of complexities, all right, to implement and integrate these technologies together. So we want some out-of-the-box technologies to help establish a single point of administration. One place that I can onboard, one place that I can offboard. As well as when I onboard that staff member or student, how does it get provisioned into everything they need access to? And at the end of the day, as Bob has talked about, Phil's talked about, you've identified today, David, how do we implement the necessary security technologies, processes, and standards to protect the end user's identity and data based on who they are and what they have access to, which is always a really important point. And last but not least, how do we implement some self-service technologies to help drive these efficiencies into the end user experience as well as our technology administrators? So these are all goals that we've identified. And Phil, you articulated this wonderfully, is how do we start to move the emphasis away from endpoint protection, which is a necessity, more toward identity protection. But more importantly, David, as we tie systems together, how do we make that connected experience for both the end users and our administrators behind the scenes something that's efficient for K-12?
Thank you, Chuck. Next item we had is the one I introduced. Yes.
Before we go on, can I just mention one thing? I know we've got some, Chuck's covered the identity management, but there has been some interoperability successes. We've got a number of businesses that have even in the midst of a pandemic and everything else they have going on, have gone ahead and implemented SAML so they would have a single sign-on to multiple systems. And, and that's still an option for all of you all. We also have, the CARES Act funding allowed us to offer Infinite Campus, it's campus learning, which allowed for interoperability between Google and Infinite Campus for, some of you for the first time. So that has really been a huge step forward, along with online registration, allowing, that to become more of an efficient electronic process versus all the paper. So I think we have made some success and had some, been able to do some things in the interoperability area. But I agree that the ask for identity management, we haven't quite got there yet.
Thank you, Dee Dee. And those were mentioned. I appreciate you jumping in and mentioning those, because it wasn't like we did zero. Is we did make progress, and those are identified when we got the feedback from the districts. I could see that they talked about those being really things that we did well in 2020. Next topic is one I introduced, and this has to do with one of our master plan areas of acceleration and improvement. And are we maximizing the investment that we have? And there's a discussion here about the security that we have in place, but the portfolio of things that we have in place, is there something that you all do that makes sure that it is really being used and it's being maximized? And I suspect during this pandemic, as I was looking back through, and Marty's going to talk about the takeaways, is you've really taken a look at the things that have really made a difference and not made a difference. But Marty, I'll let you introduce some of you took a look at all the feedback from the tables, what you saw as the big takeaways, and I'll scroll down those.
Thank you, David. And absolutely, this topic was well discussed at the table. We're looking at the summary, and I look back at my notes at this time, and David, unfortunately, my notes were not from a little tablet from the Galt House. They were from the UK hospital, as I was in the middle of having a baby at that time. So I missed the live discussion, but I tell you, it really put me in a great perspective to review all of the feedback from each and every table. So not only was the discussion worthy and abundant, but it was very well-rounded. So we got a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different districts on maximizing the effective uses of the technology. So not just implementing technologies for technology's sake, but our students and teachers actually using. And what a time for this, right? So this topic really springboarded us in through the pandemic to pivot, as we've mentioned many times. And every single district has had to reflect on this very topic to figure out, what don't we have that we need to purchase? What are we buying right now, which was discussed at each table, that we're not sure if it's being used or not. And so districts cited at the summit that using specific platforms to help gauge what was referred to as usage and adoption, not just usage and adoption, but return on investment, And then all the way to this idea of impact, or what we've referred to as like learning outcomes. So the intended use, is it really helping or not? So using platforms mentioned were Bright Bytes, Impact Tool, Learning Outcomes Tool, Clever, as a dashboard to gather basic usage and adoption on platforms that students are using. Catch On was used. But from this conversation, we were able to, as Dee Dee pointed out as well, use CARES Act funding to launch into Lightspeed analytics work, which really gets at some of this targeted work as well. So we also had, districts share that the annual review process with school and district leaders is a best practice. And when you can get leadership teams involved or cabinet members involved from a learning perspective, from an instructional implementation perspective, that this is extremely helpful, and where this conversation really fits nicely. On the other side, all the way on the other side of the pendulum, districts shared at the summit that they reported not having this conversation, finds themselves in a very reactive mode where things are being bought and purchased on the fly, and the terms wild west was used more than once, and so we look at that spectrum of one end to the other and know that the truth is really driving towards the middle of and progression of all the way to understanding the uses. It reported strategies in the meeting were regular meetups with your CFO, superintendent, and that's why I loved Superintendent Seiler sharing today from Whitley County as well, hitting on the this very topic of understanding what we have, honing in on the things that are helping us and working, and dropping out some of the things that are not. Chief academic officers and principals at the table having this discussion was cited as a major value add. Super strong connections were mentioned with curriculum and instructional leaders, as I said. And then districts reported sometimes during the summit that just turning things off, as this was mentioned more than once, turning things off to see if anyone's actually using the stuff. Again, usage and adoption is that lowest level that we're targeting right now to see, are we actually using and adopting the strategies, the apps, the services, and then leveling up to find out if it's working or not. I love the mention by more than one tables at the summit that not having the right people side equation. And so bringing back the conversations about the people side of K-12 EdTech from a staffing perspective is absolutely a barrier for EdTech leaders and to EdTech leaders, and having this bigger, larger conversation at the leadership tables in schools and districts. And so we suspected that, and it was great to get that confirmation that this is very heavily connected to the people side of K-12 EdTech work. And then a final takeaway is the interest in KDE and specifically OET and our KETS master plan strategies, which we have identified, as you mentioned, David, just to call out again, multiple areas of emphasis target this big idea, and interest is definitely continues to be there and to grow on us providing leadership and tooling around this very actionable topic. We have more districts today that have taken this topic and put actionable steps in place to be able to have this conversation, especially during this time of distance, remote, virtual, digital learning strategies, and so it continues to be a valuable topic for us. Suggested goals, that we move towards statewide strategies, and we're moving towards that with partners like Lightspeed from an analytics perspective to get those usage and adoption pieces in place. We have definite cohorts in place with our Bright Bytes districts to understand the impact of the applications that are being used. That strategy is continuing to advance. So that's a goal that we are acting on right now. And then to set our field staff up to help lead conversations regionally and district by district as we move forward.
Thanks,
and
Marty.
so, David, that takes us into topic number 3.
Yeah. So this was, we've had this as a goal for a while, and so the pandemic really helped us out with this goal, I think. Now I know there was printing of paper packets, but I know for myself personally, is the reduction of stuff being printed has been pretty dramatic. And it was just interesting to look at the district's comments on this. But Marty, this is in your sweet spot here of the print and not to print. So I'll let you give the results of that.
Yes, thank you. And I'm a huge paper guy. I love me some paper. I don't at all. And so our team knows that this is one of the topics that I believe that printing is the anti-EdTech. It is the thing that keeps us from implementing strong digital learning practices. We resort back to it too often when we get uncomfortable. And so another great discussion. I'll be a little bit quicker here due to, and you can just kind of peek at this front-loaded piece about if we take a step back and look at the pandemic effect and how this acceleration has occurred, we have way fewer, not just actual printing of, paper by paper, sheet by sheet, but the overall cost. We fully believe and expect that from our TAR reports and future collection that we will see this huge dip due to the pandemic effect, right? However, our big challenge, our big question is because we're not there yet, understanding there means that maximizing the effective uses of technologies, which was the previous discussion, that when we return back to a stable, steady, in-person learning strategy, what will we do? And we suspect that with all the strategies, again, as Rusty so eloquently shared this morning, as well as Superintendent Seiler, it's a new learning strategy, and we want to hang on to those pieces. So districts shared very readily, and again, this was a pretty hot topic. It seemed like multiple table leaders shared that this was one of the most discussed topics, which generated some emotions, which is good. We suspected it would. But district-wide printing efforts are starting to come into play, where we have district-wide printing contracts, printing services contracts. We knew that, but we suspected, not every district is there, and so we see that as a reduction in cost. That was shared. Districts also can see costs going up. And so what I pulled out as a summary takeaway, David, is almost this unanimous kind of takeaway on if we see printing costs going up, that is a direct result of getting more complete and accurate reporting. If we see or when we see costs going down, and again, this was pre 100% remote learning, right? This conversation it's on the cusp of it the day before. When we see costs going down, that's a result of digital teaching and learning integration strategies. It's also a result of district-wide comprehensive tracking, and in many cases, using softwares like PaperCut and other cited strategies to monitor and track and report. So it's a sliding scale. So from the takeaways, David, there's a direct correlation on spend on technology versus spend on paper. So as we spend on technology, direct correlation is a reduction in paper, which is one of our master plan areas of emphasis. So we're very excited about that. Huge takeaway from the CIO Summit. Also, for districts who have progressive enterprise approaches, there was a lot of conversation about that. It looked like a lot of sharing on that. And then districts feel good about the topic of using these comprehensive strategies moving forward. Districts who don't have the comprehensive strategy shared that they would like to get there. So that's a good takeaway for us. If there's not a one-to-one student device strategy, takeaway is that we expect printing to stay high and possibly continue to increase. However, as Chuck shared earlier, connecting our heartbeat information, we have a one-to-one mobile technology strategy, and we have one-to-one mobile technology devices ready for every kid. So that is a fact now. Now, the question is, can we move the ratios more to implementation on learning? That's what we're all working for now. So two just real quick suggested goals to take away from: encourage use of district-wide tracking, best practices, example through softwares like PaperCut that was cited, and a few others were mentioned for all printing. And also make sure and ensure, as districts shared at the summit, that all printing service purchases are running through district-wide spending and purchasing patterns through Munis. Again, encourage that work. Encourage district-wide printing service contracts. So instead of individual schools going out and doing their own thing, district-wide contracting. And some of our districts have shared at the summit how they were able to pull that off and how painful it was. I know Kermit Belcher has shared and last month mentioned on that, that is work that Jefferson County is engaged in as well. Not without pain, but is very valuable and very worth it. Continue to track line items through TAR report, and then also continue to drive this correlation between the technologies or digital devices and digital access and digital platforms, that correlation between reduced printing costs as stated in our master plan. Thank you, David. I hope that was a good summary and capture.
Thank you.
And ready for the next topic.
The last one we had is, and really the time is telling us how well did that play off for you, is we were at this time really focused in on how's the digital health within the school campus, which is important, and also the cybersecurity and data privacy that you have in place, which has been a huge factor, obviously, during this time that we spent the early part of this webcast talking about it, because of all the cyber criminals super interested in it during this pandemic. I think Jody Rose introduced this topic, and I think Bob and Phil, I think, are going to talk about, they wrote the big takeaways from it. But Bob and Phil, I'll let you briefly hit up on these.
I'll go ahead and get started, Bob. I think there's a couple things just to preface this whole discussion. And number one, all of the input was pre-COVID. And we know that during the last several months and stuff, started, ending last year's school year, the summer, and then starting this school year, that the answers may be different or more enhanced due to COVID. So, and the second thing is your digital footprint in your even in your small school districts is larger than any digital footprint likely in your whole county. There may be a couple exceptions of that, but in most counties in Kentucky, the school districts have the most sophisticated and the most comprehensive and the most widespread, networks, digital networks in the whole county. So, but I say that because a lot of the discussion from the summit was around, we really can't, it's hard for us, especially in rural Kentucky, to attract really good network people, and it's difficult to keep them. And we see that across the state. We see some school districts that obviously have one FTE to maintain their digital health, or they have a half of one to maintain their digital health. And not everybody has an army or the needed resources, as we've talked about that in the people side of EdTech, for a couple of years now. So some of the things that I got from this, the district networks are more sophisticated than ever before, and they're not only workstations, file servers, and printers, and I say the printers for Marty's sake, but it also includes Internet of Things, security systems, environmentals, HVAC, and those kinds of things. And then we had COVID come along, and now it includes hotspots and trying to get internet to the kids and putting internet in your parking lots, and just all kinds of new challenges. And I would bet, for the most part, you haven't gotten any more resources to manage those. I think there was an emphasis on the wireless network, that the wireless network was the most difficult piece to manage and to make sure that it was healthy. And it's kind of like a moving target, so we, especially if you're moving, access points around, or you got construction in your building or something like that, it's just, it's a more difficult to manage than a wired network. and just a real big emphasis on attracting and keeping talent. And I think there's also a few school districts that are using a few of our vendors to help them manage and keep their network healthy. And I don't know that we have those specifically identified on contracts, but that may be something that we want to look at in the future, to have something that's more tangible on a contract to pick from to help districts do, some management of their networks, keeping those updated and making sure that that their digital footprint from a network perspective especially is very, very healthy. And then the second part of this discussion was for security. And I really, got the feeling from Jody's notes that there's a big emphasis on, no matter what you do in security, it's probably never enough to overcome the sticky note passwords stuck on people's monitors or under their keyboards. And that seemed to be, and I think after years and years of preaching that you shouldn't do that, I think we still find that in almost every organization, especially organizations that have to change their passwords very, very often. Let's say every 30 days, because it's hard to remember it because you may not actually access the system you're trying to get into every day of the week. So I think it's us moving to our password upgrade policy of especially like in KDE with it's 15 characters or more for a passphrase, and it's good for 180 days. I think that will cut down on the amount of sticky notes that people are writing their passwords down on. There's a need for security health checks, and I think districts really don't have a good way to procure those or know how to go about that. That may be something that we want to kind of clarify and bring to the forefront so that districts can have some way to have a third party look at their security systems that they have in their school districts. And then the old saying that security isn't important until something really, really bad happens. And that's true. We find that even at KDE, and sometimes people don't want to take it seriously until something bad happens and they kind of beat you over the head because you haven't done all the 100% of things that it takes to keep them safe. So that was a really good discussion, and I think I appreciate Jody for your good notes on that for me to take a deep dive into. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, Phil, thank you. And a couple of things that I wanted to throw out there to kind of go along with this. One is that I look at a lot of this stuff like the HVAC, elevators, surveillance systems. To me, I group those under Internet of Things, IoT devices, because they're things that 20 years ago wouldn't have had an internet connection, but now they do. So I think just recent, I think we've got it posted now. Some of our engineers, the security team, and I put together a document briefly discussing how to manage Internet of Things devices in our network environment. And if it isn't posted, I'll make sure it is, and I'll send out a link to that to everybody. And I think that might be helpful information. Regarding security health checks, we do have a couple of security vendors on state contract. KDE uses these state contracts to try to do a network vulnerability assessment every year. And you can go through these contracts and get different sized investments. There's not a one size fits all. I encourage everyone to consider doing something like that. They're not free, but they are very good. There are some free alternatives out there from companies like, you heard me mention earlier today, MSISAC. And so there are some free options out there, which I think everybody probably appreciates. But again, I'm not going to say you get what you pay for, because I think that it's so important that anything you get is very good. And I also want to remind folks that our security team will look at your public-facing internet websites to make sure that they are in good shape, if you will. one of the things that kind of struck me here was that districts would like to see KDE provide more guidance and thou shouts. And, that thou shalt is something that I've specifically tried to stay away from, as a matter of fact, because, again, not, one size doesn't fit all. And so I really want everyone to get to the same baseline of security. I think that's so important so that we can raise Kentucky K-12 security up to a level where the cyber criminals want to try to move on to the next state. I'd much rather them try to hit Ohio than Kentucky, not wishing anything bad on Ohio, Scott Kane. I know you're out there listening. But I would much rather them pass us by. And if we can all get up to that same base level, that's super important to me. You will see me kind of throwing out some additional recommendations, and with your advice, and I'm saying and I'm looking out at our CIOs and DTCs, with your advice and recommendations, we can make some thou shouts if they are going to help, if they're not going to overburden you, if they're really going to make a difference. And that's something that I'm encouraged to see. We want to get to the point where passwords and the end user's mistakes aren't going to be so devastating to us. So that if someone gets a fish and they give up their password, we don't want that to be a devastating data breach or loss to the district. And so we are going to be moving towards multi-factor authentication, conditional access, trying to get everyone up to that baseline. It's a process, though. We can't implement everything at once. We have to build in that foundation and then start layering some of that stuff up there. If I could just snap my finger and make it all there, I certainly would do it. I know David Couch would do the same. Everyone in here would do the same. But we have to kind of take those baby steps first. And I definitely appreciate the feedback that we got from there. And again, Jody, thank you for putting those great notes together. David?
I appreciate those that participated in our summit, and then also for all of our staff that led the discussion on the tables and then did the summary of this. I think it's very, very helpful. And typically our summit is listed as one of the top, top things that districts mention at the end of the year of adding value to them. And so we wanted to circle back to that. So it was really good stuff in here. Sean and Dee Dee, I'm going to put the two topics about the reports to the legislature on our January webcast list. I do want our field staff to send the communication that our commissioner sent to the legislature with both those reports, talking about what's in them. The computer science one lists all the offerings at all kinds of grade levels, and then the one about foster care talks about, really, this is not a technology problem. 99% of the problem is not a technology problem with the foster care records being quickly transferred. It's really a people and process problem. It has nothing to do with technology. But we talk about in the report the things that we're trying to do to improve that 1% of the problem. But we'll focus more on that in the January timeframe and give Sean and Dee Dee a chance to talk about it. But in the interim, we'll send those reports out. Dee Dee, what update do you have for us with Infinite Campus and the school report card?
Just real quick, we had a few things. This month we did implement some new functionality within the school report card. We added some trend and compare charts. The trend charts had been there before, but now we are able to disaggregate multiple levels of detail at the same time. So, we hope that you've had a chance to look at that. We did have a webcast question number 4 on that, and it looks like those who have looked at it are positive or neutral, but we've got a lot of people that haven't seen it yet. So it is relatively new and there's a lot going on. So if you get a chance to take a look at that. Bright Bytes is doing user experience testing for us. So we are hoping to get some feedback from communities. So we will share that information as we get more detail on that. And just as a reminder, there's always the opportunity to put feedback in the school report card in the feedback option at the bottom right of the card. Next real milestone for the school report card this year will be the financial transparency. I'm understanding that will be a little bit later than usual. So you're probably looking at the May timeframe instead of the April timeframe this year before you start hearing a lot about that. So, but know that's coming. Just a shout out to the standards group that the standards are all now on Infinite Campus, and we hope your districts are taking advantage of that. And then a plug for the Infinite Campus training. We've got training coming up for mid-year training the first week of January. It's that Friday. So please help us spread the word on that. David mentioned the House Bill 312 earlier with the records transfer. We do have a district that's going to be participating and provide some helpful hints. So the way the training works is it's broken down by time slots, and we stay very strict to those time slots. So if you have folks at the school level that you feel like could take advantage, help us let them know about that training. Also, I think there's going to be some training on e-transcripts from Parchment. So if you have high school counselors that could take advantage of that, help spread that word too. They'll be coming out this next week. And then thank you for your feedback on the campus learning. It looks like a number of districts have already taken advantage of it. We've got some still waiting to take advantage, but that training is part of the CARES Act. So we hope that you will, or if you feel like you need more, reach out to me. We may have some dollars left that maybe a district didn't take advantage of that you may be able to benefit from. So that's a really quick synopsis, David.
Nice job, Dee Dee.
I can round it up at the end here.
That sounds good. Well, I want to end it as close as 11:30 as we can. We're going to stay on a little bit afterward. I do want to go through the Go Soapbox questions for those that hang around, but I'm going to close it out for those watching by YouTube and those others for our bonus time. But it's been a tremendous year in every kind of way. As I said, I'm as proud as I've ever been of any time I've worked in my 28 years of KDE these past 9 months. And so I want to thank my staff that is on here, that's watching. Thank you for all the tremendous behind the scenes work with such high quality and diligence that you've done in this entire year, but especially over these past 9 months. And also my, hats off for all of our district folks and all of our KETS partners that are watching that made the magic happen. Like I say, it's not 100% perfect, but we have a lot to be proud of for these past 9 months. And so I hope you're able to enjoy a good Christmas break and then kicking off the new year. It's exciting to hear, in America yesterday, as we're covering what happened really was the kickoff of COVID-19 for most of us back on March 11th when it got real, to see the first people in Kentucky getting the vaccination. So you can see the beginning of the end, actually. But there are a lot of things we have done over these past 9 months will not end when the new school year begins. A lot of these things will have that sticky factor. But my heartfelt appreciation for all of you, and I hope you have a good Christmas break. So we'll end here for those that want to take off. I do want to just I'll hang around here for 15 or 20 minutes, just a informal discussion. But once again, my heartfelt thank you, and hope you have a good Christmas break. Take care.